Welcome to Build. I'm Joe Levy, and with me, the ex-ambassadors.
How's it going? Thank you guys so much for being here.
Lots of people here.
So, guys, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot of ground to cover. You've got a festival coming up.
Yeah, which is so beautifully displayed right here.
There we go. And I want to get to that, but I want to start a little further back. I want to start 2 years ago, June 2015. You've got a record coming out, VHS. It's a record that opens up with a song about it's our time, you know, it's time for the Renegades, and closes with a song about getting naked.
Yeah.
And then you get into, do I have this right? You get into a van that you bought from a church?
Yes. So at the time,
and how'd all this work out for you?
It all worked out pretty well. I mean, we're up here right now with you, so it's a pretty good sign in front of all you guys. But as for the van, our van broke down. This is like our third van or second van that we had in New York, and I think Adam.
Yeah.
You guys found.
We went and found this. There was this like van on Craigslist. So when you're searching on Craigslist for vans, it's really depressing, and there's always like one that is too good to be true.
Are any of them just advertised murder van or?
No, I mean they're all
okay.
They try to clean it. They're all. I mean, it just comes with buying a Ford E350 15-passenger van. It's
and at the time, you're living in Brooklyn and you're looking for a cheap van on Craigslist.
Yeah. So we find this thing.
Nothing suspicious at all.
That was the best one by far.
Yeah, it had been really well taken care of. It was owned by this church in Brooklyn. And we're all Jewish, which is very ironic. And we were driving around in this church van for about a year and a half. And everywhere we'd stop, like in the Midwest or down south, a couple places would give us free oil changes and free, like free tune-ups.
So it still had the church signage.
Oh
on
yeah,
it?
it still had
their phone number on it and everything. They actually called us, I think, because someone had called them because it was parked in their driveway or something like that, and someone had called the number on the side of the van to complain about it.
Yeah.
But you're in the van for a year and a half before you move up to the tour bus. Let's talk about how things started happening.
Yeah, well, it all happened very slowly and then very quickly. We have been a band for a little over 10 years now. And we did so many shows and so many tours in busted down vans and traveled all over the country, sleeping, 4 or 5 to 1 room. And we really worked and played a ton of bad shows and grinded ourselves down to the bone before we even got a record deal. And that was in 2013. We released 2 EPs, toured off that, and then once we wrote Renegades, we weren't even sure we were going to put a record out before we wrote that song. We had put 2 EPs out. They had both done pretty well. We had Jungle had been pretty successful for us. But we were still kind of down here, and Renegades, with the commercial and all the attention that it got.
So it featured in a Jeep commercial.
Yeah, featured in a Jeep commercial.
Which is where, I mean, it's a useful tool for musicians at this point, as let's say radio takes fewer chances on new music. To place a song in an ad like that can be a real break.
Exactly, yeah, and it was a cool ad. I mean, it was basically an ad for the band. It was there was barely a Jeep to be seen in the commercial, which was very cool.
I don't think there's as much of a stigma anymore about selling out, quote unquote, anymore. I think a lot of people realize now that that's the only way you make money as a musician a lot of times.
Yeah, and it is again a very, very good platform.
But I just have to ask, you're making a Jeep commercial. You didn't hold out like, guys, we're in a van. Can you give us a Jeep?
No, they actually
did.
offered.
Oh,
yeah, they did. Yeah.
We Sam and I drive
a
identical.
Jeep Renegade. If you see me see a Jeep Renegade riding around L.A.,
we have identical black Jeep Renegade.
Trust me, as rough as it is touring in a van, it would be way rougher in like a car-sized vehicle.
Oh, okay.
That would
Fair enough.
That would be some not fun times.
So this song begins to hit.
Yeah.
And things change.
Yes, they did change. They changed pretty rapidly, and over the course of that year, We debuted on late night television. We debuted on Jimmy Fallon on Tonight Show, and we played so many shows, and they just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. Started riding around in a bus, which is much nicer, much more sustainable way of touring. And yeah, things just kind of took off from there. And we were on tour. When we released the record in June, the tour cycle for that album lasted a year and a half. And we went all over the world.
Which takes us to the middle of last year, or almost, or
Yeah, well, we kind of ended our tour cycle unofficially last October, when we were able to have like 3 solid weeks at home, which we hadn't had in a very long time, and we started immediately working on the next record. We had been. So all of VHS had been recorded while we were on tour, while we were riding around in that church van, and all my vocals were recorded in hotel rooms and backstages and in the van sometimes while we were driving.
Talk to me a little about your writing process, because a lot of these songs are very heavy, rhythmically driven, but some of them start on guitar or piano, right?
Yeah, well, sometimes Adam will send me some drums.
Yeah. I think they start in many different ways. Sometimes it starts with a piano or guitar riff or a vocal, or sometimes I'm always like sending Sam and Casey just like rhythmic drum stuff with maybe like one tonal thing in it, but it's mainly just rhythm.
Yeah, and then and sometimes Casey will have chord changes that I'll write over, or I will come up with chord changes that I write a rough structure with. The last record, we also worked very closely with a producer named Alex the Kid, who is a creative and a musician in his own right. So he would send me ideas, and I would record to those ideas, and then we would kind of take them and turn them into an ex-Ambassadors song.
How did you come to this rhythmically focused sound?
We grew up listening
Just have a really great drummer.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
You
humble
set him
too.
up for that. You set him up for that one. We all grew up listening to a lot of hip hop and a lot of R&B, and that was always, a foundation for everything we did. And additionally, it kind of took us to this place where a lot of hip hop production. What's so great and cool about hip hop is that it is incorporating all of these different elements. I mean, you can have a klezmer sample over like a soul funk breakbeat, with like a Moog synthesizer underneath it, and you're working within all these different genres and creating something so unique and so new and so fresh sounding, and that was always how we kind of approached our sound, starting with klezmer music.
Sure, it all starts with
Doesn't everything?
klezmer. Yeah,
Always starts.
sure.
Going back to our roots.
Yeah, I was saying.
So the tour cycle for VHS ends in October of 2016.
Yeah.
The band has grown. We move forward to November 2016, the election. You now have a bigger platform, which you've really utilized.
Thank you.
I have to say, you've been very vocal on Instagram.
Yeah.
You've played benefits for, meaning you don't want to. You don't want to.
No,
you've been very vocal on Instagram on the night of the election or the day after.
Yeah.
You've supported trans rights. You've made statements. You've played for benefits for Planned Parenthood. Do I have this right? You were at the Women's March in D.C.?
Yeah. I was down there and actually played at a benefit for Planned Parenthood right after the march. Our mom was down there too. She was marching with a group of ladies from Ithaca, New York. So
In fact, I think she organized that group.
Oh, yeah,
Shout
that's
out
right.
to Mom.
And did I also read that you were in Charlottesville?
we played a show in Charlottesville about a week before
I see.
the white supremacists came in, and what happened in Charlottesville, and it was really really sad and frustrating, disappointing to see, because Charlottesville is such a great liberal enclave in the South, and a really enlightened college town. And they were, the reason that these white supremacists and white nationalists fell upon this town is because they were doing something so progressive by taking steps to take down Confederate monument. So yeah, it was a real bummer that's like a horrible way to put it. It was more than a real bummer what happened down there.
Let's talk a little about this commitment to activism, this commitment to using your voice, to using your platform. Where does this come from?
Well, we've always, we were brought up, by, parents who are not exactly politically active, but very politically conscious. And, all our lives we were taught, that, the most important thing in the world is, helping your fellow human beings. And, it's just sort of become, ingrained in us. And the more sort of a platform we get, the more people actually pay attention to what we're saying, the more we sort of realize that, we have this power and this responsibility to do whatever we can to try and help people, especially those people who are, being particularly, oppressed or who are having their rights taken away right now.
Yeah, and the fact that we have any sort of a platform whatsoever, I think puts us in a position where we are obligated to speak up for human rights, and actually to not be afraid to say what we feel and speak our minds, and show support for anyone who feels like they are in any way marginalized. There is a lot of white people are really afraid to speak out because they don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to ruffle any feathers and feel like, it's best if I just kind of stay out of it, especially in terms of race or xenophobia, and that's not going to get us anywhere. And I think we try to, just as often as possible, speak out and show ourselves as allies.
You mentioned xenophobia. I want to ask you about a project you worked on, a Spotify project under the title "I'm with the Band," that was meant to address the travel ban. Different artists were working with artists from one of the targeted countries.
Yeah.
Tell me about your collaboration.
So we worked with a woman named Metal Mohammed. She's from Yemen, I believe. And her story was incredible. From what she told me, she was one of, if not the first woman to publicly play music in Yemen. And which is not actually something she was encouraged or allowed to do, I believe. Yes, that's right. I mean, her friends, there was like an open mic night somewhere, and her friends knew that she played music, and they were like, "You should come up on stage and play." She's like, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, just do it." And she did it, and she loved it, and she is an incredible musician. While she was there, she got death threats and people really telling her not to perform, but she continued to perform and continued to make music until she had to flee the country. She became a refugee when war broke out there and escaped on an onion boat. She went to Djibouti first, and then I think was in Istanbul for a while. Ended up in Montreal. And Spotify found her for this campaign. And the whole campaign was about raising awareness for artists who are banned from entering the United States currently, or who would be banned under Trump's travel ban.
And you collaborated with her in Toronto, because that's where the sessions were. Many of the artists, she was already in Canada, but many of the artists were unable to enter or it was unclear whether they would be able to enter the United States to work.
That's correct, yeah.
And that song is called Cycles.
Cycles, yeah.
But you have several new tracks from, we're anticipating a second record.
Yeah, we're still not sure if any of those songs are going to Ahead of Myself is the only official single that will be on the next record.
Okay.
But we have so much new material that we can't wait to show you guys. That I think are just gonna release a bunch of new stuff for the
ones
record.
that's already out, that's bonuses.
Yeah, those are.
And are you just going to keep releasing some new music and maybe make a record sometime? Maybe if
It's all very
someday,
loose
you know?
now. That's
Okay.
kind of how the industry operates now. Very, very, kind of taking an opera. When the stars align, you're just ready to go, and you just start kind of. In the meantime, putting things out.
Well,
slowly.
let's talk about Ahead of Myself, and specifically, you've been rehearsing that song to perform it
Yes.
in Ithaca at Cayuga Sound.
Yeah.
This is your festival, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are going back to Ithaca, and the part of the point is to give back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be donating a lot of the proceeds from the festival to organizations, local organizations in Ithaca that Casey and I benefited from when we were kids. So we're giving back to the Community School of Music and Arts in Ithaca, CSMA, where I took saxophone lessons. Casey took piano lessons there. I also took swing dance classes there.
I forgot about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we are giving back
I
to.
was going to ask you to sing.
Right,
since
well,
you
yeah,
do
I
sing live in the video
I
for Ahead
forget
of
how to
Myself.
do
I was
the-
going to put
the-
you on the spot and ask you to sing a little for us, but now maybe you will have
Live
to
swing.
dance.
I
There you go.
haven't done the Lindy hop in a minute. So.
Okay. All right.
Dude, you remember the name, though. That's pretty impressive in and of itself. Yeah.
But we're also giving back to the Stewart Park Preservation Society. We're putting the show on at Stewart Park. Both of us were campers at Stewart Park Day Camp. I was a camp counselor there my first summer after college. We're giving back to the Ithaca Youth Bureau, GIAC, which is an after-school program. We are really trying to get back to the community that raised us.
Let's talk a little about Ithaca and upstate New York in general. Ithaca, I know not too much about. There's a college there, and there's something called Lake Effect Snow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you better believe it.
But upstate New York is, in some sense, it's something we've been talking a lot about in the wake of the recent election. Upstate New York is an area that once was an industrial, prosperous area, but it really has been in a state of industrial collapse for years. At the time you grew up, it wasn't a vital industrial town.
No, it wasn't. When we grew up, there was a lot of economic strife in upstate New York, and still is. I mean, even more so now. But Ithaca is lucky because of the colleges and because of the universities that are there. Cornell is there, and Ithaca College, and TC3. So they are kind of still holding the town up and putting money into it. But now it's like a lot of people are getting priced out of their homes in Ithaca and are getting pushed further and further out.
College town gentrification,
Yeah. It's upstate New York hasn't really prospered economically for a very long time. There wasn't, once all the industries went away, there wasn't any sort of infrastructure to, introduce new jobs. That's starting to change. You see it a little bit in Buffalo. I think there are a couple banks now that have relocated. I know HSBC was up there for a while. I don't think they're there anymore.
Well, the video for Ahead of Myself, you were saying, was recorded in
Rochester.
filmed in Rochester.
Yeah.
So you're bringing people's eyes to upstate, and now
Yeah.
you're literally going to be bringing bodies there for Cayuga Sound.
Yeah.
What do you want people to know about Ithaca? What do you want people to know about upstate New York?
I don't know. Ithaca in particular is, despite various trials and tribulations it's been through, it's one of the warmest, most welcoming towns I've ever been to, and I think it's managed to maintain that no matter what. And it's sort of there's a lot of sort of grayness, I guess I would say, in upstate New York. A lot of sort of almost a listless feeling, and there's Ithaca is kind of a little.
Remember, we're selling tickets here.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I was saying. Ithaca is kind of the little bright spot there, man. It's there's even on the gloomiest days, there's always happy people around, and there's always amazing things to do, and foods to eat, and things to drink, and places to walk. Even having grown up there, I still, every time I go back, I find new things to discover about it, and new places to go.
And it is also such an open community, and you're allowed to be weird, and you're allowed to be yourself completely and utterly, and that is such a nurturing environment for young artists.
Well, there we go. And people can come get weird with you on September 23rd.
100%. We would
with
expect
you and the
no
Root.
less.
Okay. We got time for some questions from the audience.
All right.
Awesome.
We got one right up front here.
Hey.
So I was wondering, what's the meaning behind your name of the band?
Oh, man.
Really deep story
Long
there.
story.
Yeah.
So
Came over.
for a long time, we were ambassadors, which came from us just looking around the room, looking for things to name the band. Like,
So you could have been
lights,
named Sherman, is what you're saying?
could,
yeah,
Yeah,
we could
okay.
have. And my drum head was called an ambassador drum head. So we were that for the first 3 or 4 years, and then we added the X.
Because we were going to get sued. If
For legal reasons.
Yeah.
There's no significance except that it was our favorite
it's a cool
of the
letter in the
new
alphabet.
names. So we wanted to keep the old name because we had worked so hard to build a brand, but we had to change it enough.
All right.
So that was there are a lot of other words and letters with ambassador before.
There was like we ambassadors.
Ambassadors, you made the right choice. X is good. We got one more right here.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. I just wondered the challenges behind Ahead of Myself, since it's recorded live, which I love the video and the concept,
Thank
by the
you
way.
so much.
But what kind of challenges did you face making the video? Because you're like singing in the middle of the street.
Yeah, it was very weird because I'm walking around with a little earpiece in, so there's not like a boombox that's blasting the track. So it's not obvious that we're making a music video. I'm walking around singing a cappella and looking like an insane person.
And I have to say, what's really impressive is you can tell you're singing live at the start of the track.
Yeah.
And then as the backing track comes in, I actually didn't know until we were talking before.
Yeah.
The whole video is you singing live.
The whole video is me singing live, and I had to really, I take really good care of my voice because we're constantly touring, and a lot of the stuff that I sing is pretty challenging. So I have to I'm a monk basically. I can't drink anymore. I have to avoid tomatoes and citrus.
Did you do the thing? No more vaporizers. Now we're into humidifiers.
Oh yeah. We're all about humidifiers.
Yeah, okay.
Vaporizers still exist in my life. But, yeah. Anyways, but yeah, I really had to take care of myself for the weeks leading up to it. I wanted to make sure that I was going to be good, and I sang.
How many
all
times?
day.
How many times you have to do it?
I probably sang that song 20 times or something throughout.
Got time
the
for one more
yeah.
question right up front.
Hey guys, I know you guys got to collaborate with a few artists. One that's actually listed right here, the Knox, I believe.
Oh yeah.
I was just wondering, what is it that you look for in a collaboration? Like, is there something in a project that you want to be a part of, or?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's just about who first wants to collaborate with us, and we always love surprises and love interesting combinations of things. So if it's someone that we've never heard of or never before have collaborated with, that's always kind of exciting. Other than that.
Just a vibe a lot of times. When you get into the studio with someone, if we're lucky enough these days to actually physically get into the studio with someone, it's how the workflow is, for lack of a better word. It's how we all create together, and it's something intangible. It's hard to put into words, but you can pretty much right off the bat know whether you're going to be compatible working and writing with someone just by how you guys interact, musically and just conversationally. And
I think we also really kind of try to find artists who have very distinct voices, whether they're actually their actual voices or just the music that they make, that they have a distinct sound that is very unique to who they are.
Well, there we go, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you guys again so much for
Thanks,
being here.
guys.
Really appreciate you guys being here.